all introducing ourselves. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on this panel session today. And really what we're going to be talking about is how law enforcement is organising to tackle cryptocurrency crime. And it's quite interesting. I think some of the things we're going to tackle are some of the things that also came up on the tax panel just now. Maybe as a starter, you could just give a little brief intro to your role and your agency. Reinier, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you. Very nice to be here, so thank you very much. My name is Reinier Bredenoord. I work for the Dutch Public Prosecution Service, and it's my role to implement and to organize a cryptocurrency team and to build the capacity to train everyone that needs to be trained and organize everything around it.
Gavin?
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Gavin Heckles. I'm currently senior manager within the Specialist Financial Operations Unit. It's a team within a team of the Complex Financial Crime Team. We don't make things easy in the UK. It's working in the National Crime Agency. I've been there since 2018. We currently have a very well-established financial investigation team looking at complex fraud, money laundering. We also have a fairly advanced national cybercrime unit which has a national responsibility for looking after cyber threats, national infrastructure threats and incident response. What we don't have yet is currently a dedicated team looking at virtual assets and exploiting that, with pockets of excellence across the agency in both financial crime and track and tracing of illicit finance with crypto. My job is to kind of pull that together and set up a team, which we're very early stages on. We have one member of staff so far out of a team of plus 20 plus. I'm here to learn from Reinier and Borja.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Borja Pastor. I am the head of the financial crime team Europol within the European Financial and Economic Crime Team, Economic Crime Center, sorry. And our role, or my role, is being chair of cases on money laundering, corruption, and asset recovery. So our approach with the cryptocurrency ecosystem is always looking from the financial side, and we have many cases, as you can imagine, always regarding financial crime. We know that criminals are abusing cryptocurrencies, not only as saving methods, but also for transport or to transfer criminal money, criminal proceeds from one continent to the other. And because of that, we have now a focus and a priority on cases where cryptocurrencies are abused by criminals. Thank you.
And we know now that crypto has evolved into every facet of investigations, and Borja, you talked a little bit about there, and Gavin, you did as well. And interested from your perspective in terms of how have you adapted to the new technology, and what key threat areas are you focused on where you're starting to see cryptocurrency emerge? So you talked a little bit about it, Borja, but Gavin, and do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think we've seen a big change, a kind of flux in the agency. I think one big thing happened which nobody's mentioned, nobody's coughed in the audience today, but COVID had kind of hit us in the UK, and what we noticed was money was king during the period before, and probably still is at the moment, but is kind of slipped slightly. But money couldn't move very easily in that transition period. And another few things happened at the same time where working with law enforcement partners in Europe and other places, a number of secure encrypted platforms were taken down for dedicated use by criminals. And within that was a swathe of evidence of the movement of cash and illicit finance, but moreover a move towards crypto, which I think we probably knew was happening, but was kind of laid to bear. So we've seen a kind of shift away really from cyber dependency into more kind of routine day-to-day crimes. So I think that's kind of recognition of the need for a department like this to kind of shift towards.
Reinier?
Yeah, I join what they say. It's more and more all kinds of crime. It's the usual crimes. It's old school offline criminality that's being facilitated with virtual assets. And we also see there's shifts within the use of virtual assets. So like a few years ago, criminals would transfer in Bitcoin, and now we see it's less and less in Bitcoin. It's more in, for example, a few years ago, you would have a transfer in Bitcoin and then a transfer to USDT, and then the USDT would be saved or transferred, and now we see the entire transfer is in USDT. And we also see more and more use of crypto to plastic, so the use of the debit cards. It's a very easy way to convert cryptos to cash money, and that has quite a facilitative factor for a lot of criminals. Last year I presented case we had on crypto to plastic, and now we see more and more of those cases coming up in more investigations and in more house searches. We find the cards, so that's something to worry about. Yeah.
And crypto hasn't always been part of the law enforcement toolkit. Has crypto made it easier or more challenging as an element in an investigation? Who wants to take that one? Borja?
So it's true that years ago, no law enforcement, even criminals, trust in crypto. Only a few cases on crypto. But now, both criminals and police officers, law enforcement, we have many cases on cryptocurrency. We know that criminals are using. I will highlight in terms of crypto products, for instance, DeFi or the mixers are a key focus that we should have. Also, stable coins, of course, USDT, USDC. But at the end, you know what criminals are using, or the risky phase is when they use all of them, and just to facilitate the crime, to finance organized crime. It's true that criminals now, they have a large tool or kit to launder money, but also law enforcement, we have also a large tool and knowledge on this. It's not like years ago. In terms of modus operandi, or in terms of kind of criminals using this, for us is very challenging. Underground banking is similar to my colleagues mentioned before. So old school criminals, underground banking is an old school method, an old school modus operandi, but now the underground bankers, as I prefer to call them, are using also cryptocurrencies to provide money laundering services to other criminals. And also they mix this kind of services with other old school, criminal techniques, as trade-based money laundering. And yeah, so it's a very challenging time now, but also it's true that law enforcement are adapting quickly to the new phenomenon.
And Gavin, one of the things that NCA is doing is increasing operational capacity to target financial crime, which you've just spoken about. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? When did you decide you needed to scale? How are you looking for people? What kind of training and resources do you need to give the team? What's your current thinking? You said you've got one person so far, so you've obviously got a plan.
Yeah, no bother. We've only got half an hour, so I'll start with So I think the key thing was when we identified the threat. I touched a little bit about earlier on about recognising where that was. I think as an agency, we've kind of we've wanted to move that way for a number of years. We've finally got in a position where we've got the requisite finance behind that. I think the biggest gap at the minute is the skills gap that we have. So we, as I mentioned, we do have highly skilled financial investigators with pockets of excellence around the ability to track and trace illicit use of virtual assets, virtual currencies, digital assets, whatever you want to call them. And we have a kind of really well adapted and kind of well brought on national cybercrime unit who've been doing this for a number of years in the cyberspace. The gap is to try and pull those together. So the aim being is to have a kind of team that can exploit what's there already. So a target and a kind of development team to look at the material we already hold. The NCA is quite fortunate, as amongst another UK law enforcement partners. We have a quite already well-developed set of bulk data sets that we can kind of work through. We've got partnerships in UK law enforcement, in partner services overseas, that we can kind of exploit to look what's within there. We already know quite a lot of what's happening. The legislation hasn't caught up yet. So as my colleague mentioned earlier from HMRC, we're waiting for the legislation to adapt into the new year. So we need
That's
to get...
That's going to make a real difference, isn't it?
It's going to make a huge difference, yeah. In terms of us being to proactively be able to go out there, recognise illicit exchanges as banks, and kind of use the legislation that we have there in a good way. And I think that really is getting the people in place. We're going to go through a kind of recruitment and kind of training phase. We've got to somehow translate excellent kind of knowledge around virtual assets into illicit tracking of funds and also investigative skills. And vice versa. We've also got to train up people in the illicit sector and sort of financial investigation into the crypto side of things. And in amongst that, there's got some people who've got a decent knowledge and the ability to kind of drive investigations and also comply with the legislative requirements around criminal practice, disclosure, all of the complex things that we like to put in place for ourselves as law enforcement and prosecutors to get things over the line safely and make sure that the cases are prosecuted or the assets are recovered.
Thank you. And I think, Borja, you talk about something similar at Europol in terms of you've got a set of cyber specialists who really understand crypto investigations, but the challenge in terms of being able to get your financial crime teams up and enabled. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit, about what some of those challenges are?
Yeah, indeed, how I told you at the beginning, I'm working in the FEC, so in the European Financial Economic Crime Center. That means that our approach within Europol is always the financial crime, so that is our main goal. It's not is different for other centers in Europol, and the challenge that we have, of course, is try to encourage financial investigators and financial investigation units to tackle and to disrupt networks providing money laundering services abusing cryptocurrencies. We are not talking about scams, not talking about cyber attacks. So is this kind of criminal networks using cryptocurrencies to transform or to transport cash or proceeds, criminal proceeds from one country to the other. So this is the main challenge that we have. And because of that, we have set up several operational task force focused on the phenomenon of underground banking, when cryptocurrencies are also a main goal within our investigations.
Thank you. And Renier, from your perspective, what about from you?
Yeah. Well, we think it's very important to organize it from the economic crime perspective, because it's such a broad use in criminal use. We have the advantage that we, as a prosecution service, we lead all the investigation of all the investigative agencies. So we can ask the questions, but then you have to make your prosecutors ask the questions. So it's very important to train those prosecutors.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we build a center of excellence, which isn't that big because, as well, prosecution service isn't that big in personnel. So we now have 7 people dedicated to virtual assets, and it's growing. But we've made quite the steps in growing, so we don't need that many more people. We just need to broaden the capacity and to make sure that everyone knows to ask which questions should be asked and knows what to do when the virtual assets pop up in an investigation or might pop up in an investigation, because if you only act once you've seen the cryptos, you're quite late. Yep. So we're trying to cascade it. We have a specialized team, and the specialized team does very complex cases, and for that team the main challenge is, because we're a prosecuting service, not an investigative service, our main challenge is to make the translation from what happens in the financial and technical context into the legal framework. So how can we prosecute this? What can we do? What can't we do? How should we interpret this? And in the Netherlands we have very tech-neutral money laundering legislation, so that helps us a lot. But we must make that translation. So we need the people to think on that, and then those people who can run complex cases need to educate the rest. So and if someone has a question, we can help, and it could be a phone call for 5 or 10 minutes or half an hour, where you say, well, you should do this and this. It could be that we borrow someone to an investigation for half a year or a year part-time, so that they can really assist in depth, and that's the way we try to cascade throughout the prosecution service.
So it sounds like similar across all 3 organisations in terms of the experience that you've got so far, and then trying to cascade that more widely across the organisations. What do you see as the opportunities in the next year for law enforcement as crypto adoption continues to increase for both illicit and non-illicit activities? Borja?
So I think that the adoption of cryptocurrency, of course, is increasing. So it's something that is one of the challenges. It's something that we should be aware. And for me, how I see the way to, from the law enforcement side, of course, to tackle the abuse of cryptocurrencies, and also from the financial crime side, is we need to have this kind of, we need a mix, a combination of both expertise, so the cyber expertise with the financial investigation expertise. For you to know, my background, my expertise is financial crime. For me, it's enough to know which kind of cryptocurrencies or which kind of crypto products are using criminals, how those products are working, are running, and then try to figure out how criminals could land their money using this kind of products. So at the end, for a financial investigator, it's not really complicated to adapt to this new scenario. It's true that when we are talking about tracing cryptocurrencies, we need people with expertise and with experts in tracing cryptocurrencies, and that is how we have in our team, in our unit, these kind of profiles working together with this. So I think that is something that is spreading. I think that, of course, in the future we'll have new products, new kind of virtual assets, and yeah, the only thing that we have to do is adapt to them and develop our expertise.
Thank you. And Gavin, what about you? And maybe you could also touch on partnership with industry. And I mean, that might be organisations like Chainalysis, but it could also be with, you know, crypto exchanges, banks, that kind of organisations.
Yeah, I think it's probably good news in the sphere rather than all bad news. Yeah, there are challenges which we'll overcome around the training and kind of skills that we have in the department and the agency. But I think the opportunities are there as well. I mean, obviously the blockchain's immutable, the records are there. We'll track down the illicit actors. You know, and I think working with the likes of Chainalysis, working with partners in academia, we can exploit some of the technology that's there. We're already in discussion with virtual reality companies around how we train and how we utilise office management. It's going to be a distributed team. We're discussing with other threat areas across the agency, for instance, child abuse material. It's already happening in terms of the online use of the metaverse for the abuse of children, and it's around exploiting those technologies, using them and understanding them. And having the right partnerships with the people who understand. The vast majority of people within the agency, the vast majority of people we work with, we're just cops or we're just civil servants that have come around. So we need the right skills, people with the right knowledge, and that kind of partnership of flow as well, of individuals, potentially actually people coming inside and outside of the agency. I think we worry quite heavily in public sector in the UK around losing people to private sector. I think that's probably quite a positive thing in terms of people getting the skills in the right way to move out of the public sector into the private sector, and that transition back as well, and that link into academia. So I think I think a year might be quite tight on that, but we'll see where we are in 12 months, and then hopefully we're moving a little bit faster than we are now. I think.
Maybe we'll come back into Links in a 12 months time and sit on the panel and talk about what progress we've made over the last 12 months.
And I'll bring the HR person that slowed it down.
and Renier, what about from your perspective in terms of what do you see as the opportunities in the next 12 months?
Well, I think what will be a great opportunity is MiCA kicking in, so the European regulatory framework. I think that will be a big step, and well, we'll see what happens. The dust still needs to settle, I think. So in 12 months is perhaps too early, so let's make it 18 months to evaluate on that, because it has been adopted last month, so there's, well, still 18 months till it becomes positive law. But I think that will offer a lot of opportunities. What I also think, because, well, the threats and new developments, we can rely for a great part on public parties. But what I also think is very important, the sector is growing up, and we see that in the Netherlands as well. And we try to collaborate with them. We try to explain them what we see as criminal use and make them less vulnerable for criminal misuse. So the sector gets a stronger contra crime, but they also get more responsibility the further we go. So I think there will be a lot of interesting developments next year.
Excellent, very good. And I think most of you have touched on Centre of Excellence and establishing best practice and then sharing things out. Just a final view from each of you as to kind of what that looks like from each of your agencies. So Centre of Excellence, you know, where does the Centre of Excellence sit inside your agency? Where should it sit? Is it inside a central team? Should it sit inside economic crime? Should it sit inside cyber? Is there a right answer on that in terms of being able to mobilize mobilize that forward. Borja, did you have a view on that? And just a closing comment, really.
So Europol doesn't have a center of excellence. So we have is a big pool of experts and colleagues with large expertise on both topics, so in financial investigation and cyber investigation. You know that in Europol there are, regarding those topics, two different centers. The Cyber Criminal Center, EC3, and also the EFEC, that is the center where I am. When we have cases where the main scope is the financial crime, so when the investigators in the member states, they are looking for money laundering evidence to prosecute someone, they ask for our support, so we are the ones supporting those cases, those investigations, because usually those criminals are not using very sophisticated methods in terms of virtual assets or cryptocurrencies. But when also we have, for instance, investment frauds with cryptocurrencies, also in our investigation we have some professionals, enablers providing money laundering using cryptocurrencies, but how I told you is not very sophisticated, it's not very complicated to carry out those investigations from our side. And also in Europol, in the other center, in C3, the one that I mentioned you, they are more as, they have more expertise on the crypto side, on the cyber side, so they are cyber investigators. And when the investigation and the investigators need or request this kind of support, they are the ones who provide the best support. And
so shared endeavours effectively across all of the teams, so bringing the best practice from one and expertise for one and coming together. What about from your perspective, Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really complicated question to answer. I totally recognise everything Borja said, because actually the skills are spread across the agency, and whilst we're talking about pulling them together. Obviously, we've got a bit of a step ahead in terms of where we are with the NCA, because the NCCU have done this for years effectively in terms of the prevention space and the protecting space around trying to kind of tech design out a lot of the issues that we're already facing in terms of the illicit finance side. But rather biasedly, I'm kind of based on the illicit finance side of the organisation now, the complex financial crime team. And I think it probably does sit there a bit neater in terms of we already have the staff who are kind of well versed in developing cases around illicit finance, proving criminality, using civil powers, actually exploiting tax powers that the NCA officers have as well, and going after kind of funds and finance. And I think when there's that switch in the legislation, they'll be kind of set up to do that. We already have people who are really good at kind of presenting evidence in a way that's understandable for juries if we go to the prosecution side of it, and also producing those kind of financial applications in terms of disclosure orders, notices and production orders that are going to be required to gather the evidence in a way. We're going to have to adapt how we get that information, because we're moving very much more internationally focused, and we're already kind of internationally focused on some of the financial crime, but actually this is much more distributed, much more spread, so we'll have to form those relationships a little bit tighter with the exchanges and other locations to gather that data. But I think we're probably in the right place in terms of where we're sitting and just sharing the kind of skills out a little bit. And we will also have a kind of a support mechanism and have people who can sit alongside investigations. We're calling them crypto financial investigation managers. So we currently have financial investigation managers provide policy and write policy and support senior investigators. And we'll have the same effectively for the crypto and virtual asset side. They'll be able to kind of translate investigations for investigation teams, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. And René, last few words from you on the same subject.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I think there's no wrong answer. The wrong answer is if you don't organize it. But I think I prefer to organize it from the economic crime perspective, from the money laundering perspective. You see that virtual assets are being so broadly misused that organize it in the cybercrime, the problem you have is that it stays in the cybercrime unit, and they can facilitate other teams, but the challenge is to horizontally organize it. And I think that's best being done from economic crime perspective, where you can chase the money laundering and the asset seizures and things like that. And it's all about acting in the digital domain. And if you look at criminal use and tackling criminal use and criminal activity, if everything that has a plug is cyber, then we don't have any other forms of crime fighting left in half a decade. So the challenge is to make sure that the traditional crime-fighting teams are equipped in the digital domain, and it's just a financial tool in the digital domain. And I think that's how we should face it and how we should organize it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, all of you, this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm booking you all for this time next year so we can come back and see whether the predictions you made actually pay off. So thank you very much.
Thank you.